Dr. Greg Nigh. Welcome back to the deep dive. And today I want to talk about something, it's sort of a pet peeve of mine that I want to kind of get straight with people. And in the process, I think maybe educate you a little bit about how to read health news headlines that have to do with cancer and new therapies that are going to kill cancer. So, sort of the overview of this is that headlines, of course, they're trying to get readers and they want a headline that will get you to click through. And so headlines tend to announce very promising things about cancer. Uh, but there are three kinds of studies that you need to be aware of. Maybe this is old news, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, there are clinical studies. So those are the most robust kind where you have cancer patients and you have a therapy and you give some people the therapy and you give other people a placebo and you see how different the outcomes are. So that's actually like a phase 3 clinical trial. There are different phases, but it doesn't matter right now. So that's a clinical trial is where you test the therapy in patients. Now, before you get to a clinical trial, you have what are called in vivo studies, and that's usually an animal model. So you've got mice that are bred so that they don't have a very good immune system, or, they genetically modify mice to be susceptible to various kinds of tumors. And then they give a therapy to the mice, usually inject it, and you find out, do they have fewer tumors or smaller tumors or less progression of the tumors when you do that therapy versus not doing it. So those are in vivo, meaning in living tissue. Before you even get to that one, you have in vitro. These are cell studies where there are very well defined lines of cells. So, they've been around for generations, these cancer cells that are fed in such a way that they just keep dividing. And so you have these cells, labs acquire them from the suppliers, and you get these cancer cells, and then you have a therapy that you think, well, maybe this herbal extract will have an impact. So you got one dish of those cells and another dish of those cells, and you put your extract in one of those two dishes, and you see what happens to the growth of those cancer cells when you add the extract compared to when you didn't add the extract. So, what very commonly happens in the health world that then translates on to patients that I have conversations with all the time is that you find that, oh my gosh, when you put this extract in cancer cells in a laboratory, they don't grow as fast, or maybe even it kills them. Headline: study shows that this extract kills, or stops tumor growth, or something. When in fact, they just did it in a cell dish. They maybe haven't even tried it in animals and certainly not tried it in clinical trials. So, and the problem is, and I read a quote years and years ago, decades ago, and I believe it was a big pharma executive who made the comment that if we could get rid of cancer as easily in people as we do it in mice, we would have no cancer problem. Because the fact is, not only can a lot of things kill cancer in a petri dish, but they can actually do it quite effectively in mice. But that doesn't translate into people, at least not commonly. So anyway, I want to I'm going to run through a few health headlines here. Hopefully this will show up. So just to give you kind of an example of what I'm talking about, the kind of things that you need to key in a little bit when you see it. So scientists discover natural compound that stops cancer progression. Oh my mercy, what cancer patient doesn't want to get some of that compound? So, if you keep reading on down this description of that study, well, actually, what you find is that they found that this compound blocked this enzyme activity in a tumor cell line. So, they got some tumor cells, tumor cells utilize an enzyme that kind of helps them spread around, and this compound in this petri dish blocked that enzyme. Is it going to do that in people? Well, we don't know. It's probably going to be years before we find out. Now, maybe it will. It's possible that, oh my gosh, this is the new great cancer therapy. Probably not, but it could be. But the risk is that people, especially people with cancer, see headlines like that and think, I got to find out how I can get some of that compound. And this commonly ends up with people who initially come to me who are taking, sometimes dozens of supplements that these headlines have said they have these various positive effects on cancers. But really what they've shown is that they have effect on cancer cells. Different thing. So let me just go to the next headline here for you. This one, let's see. This was a plant extract that inspires a new chemistry and new early lead against triple negative breast cancer. Very aggressive kind of breast cancer. Everybody would like a promising new therapy in this particular situation. So, early new lead, maybe. In laboratory dish experiments conducted with biologists, the researchers showed the compound's efficacy against HER2-positive breast cancer cells and triple-negative breast cancer. So, again, these are laboratory studies. The probability that this would play out into a therapy with significant benefit for patients in the real world diagnosed with these kinds of cancer is very, very small. It's possible, but it's very small. There's a lot of hope that comes through the headlines, and I'm not trying to squash hope. It's very important to maintain the attitude that any kind of cancer can be overcome. It's tying hopes to these initial, very, very initial kinds of studies that I think can be a problem. I have another one that I just pointed out. Ginger versus cancer, a natural compound targets tumor metabolism. Great. Cancer is a metabolic disease. I have been practicing that way and speaking about that topic for a couple of decades now. What I want to make sure is clear when people read a study like this. Now, ginger has lots of health benefits. I'm not knocking ginger. So what did they do here? They found in a type of ginger, a natural compound found in ginger can throw cancer cells into disarray by disrupting how they generate energy. Great. That's a very important finding. You want to disrupt energy metabolism within cancer cells that are in the body. Those are the ones that matter. So what did the actual study that generated that headline say? Well, the study investigates the anti-cancer effects of ethylp methylcinnamate in early ascites tumor cells, a very specific, very well-established type of tumor cell used by lots of laboratories that are studying the effects of various drugs or extracts on cancer cells. They get these kind of cancer cells. Again, it's great that they're studying these natural compounds and their effect on these particular kinds of cancer cells. Good. I'm glad they're doing that work. I guess my message is that when you read headlines that talk about these herbal extracts, continue reading. You don't have to know the details of how studies were done, but they will tell you, were they studying cells? Were they studying animals, usually mice or rats? Or was this a clinical trial? Very rare that it's a clinical trial. And clinical trials are the ones that are really telling you what works. Now, there are many kinds of substances that have, in fact, been tested in clinical trials. Most commonly, almost always, those are used in combination with conventional therapy. So, for instance, curcumin. lots of studies showing that when you take curcumin in conjunction with many different kinds of conventional therapy, chemotherapy, radiation, you have better outcome than if you don't take curcumin. I'm a big fan of deuterium-depleted water. You can see I've done another podcast, then please look it up and check out my introduction on deuterium-depleted water. I believe it's one of the most underrated therapies within the entire alternative, or not even alternative, within the medical world. So there are many studies that look at conventional and alternative together. I'm not saying that there are no alternative therapies that cannot be efficacious standalone. I've witnessed it clinically many times over 23 years in practice. What I'm saying is that studies that give headlines that say some new extract controls cancer or stops its growth or whatever is trying to get you to click in. That's why they're giving it a big headline. And what you need to be doing is reading about how that study was done. And if it was done in cells, all right, maybe that's going to be interesting clinically. Probably not. But anyway, so I just wanted to make sure that people understand the difference of those three types of studies that are done with cancer, and how to be a little more discerning when you're reading those articles. And if you have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments here. Please do subscribe and like and all that stuff you should do. If you have topics you would also like me to cover in the future, please do put that in the comments. Otherwise, keep an eye on this channel because I'll be back with more before long.